Compounding is arguably one of the most influential forces shaping the direction of an average person's life. Yet the majority of people never truly grasp how it operates. Many assume it is reserved only for wealthy investors or people deep inside financial markets, but that assumption is completely wrong. This force quietly determines why two individuals who earn the same income, hold similar positions, and come from nearly identical circumstances can end up living radically different lives a decade later. It steadily multiplies not just money, but also ability, credibility, physical well-being, and even the weight of past mistakes. If you fail to understand how this mechanism works, you can spend years making seemingly correct decisions, only to abandon the process right before everything begins to shift in your favor. This is exactly why so many hard-working individuals feel disconnected from their own progress. Your routine is consistent. You wake up at the same hour, prepare the same morning drink, follow the same route to work, and dedicate a full day of effort. You are not avoiding responsibility. You handle your obligations, pay what you owe, and attempt to save when possible. From the outside, everything appears disciplined and responsible. Yet, when you pause and evaluate your situation after months or even years, the results feel unchanged. Your financial position looks similar, your stress levels remain high, and your sense of progress feels non-existent. It is like running endlessly without ever moving forward, putting in effort while remaining stuck in place. This silent frustration has become the defining experience for many people trying to build a stable life. When you observe others advancing in wealth or career, it often seems effortless. From the outside, you may assume they possess hidden knowledge or secret opportunities that were never available to you. While external factors like luck or environment do play a role, the deeper issue is much simpler and far more universal. The real problem is not a lack of effort, but a misunderstanding of how progress actually unfolds. Most people are conditioned from a very young age to expect a straight-line relationship between effort and reward. In school, you study for a set amount of time and receive a grade that reflects that effort. Later in life, you exchange hours of work for a fixed amount of income. This creates a predictable pattern where output appears directly tied to input. Because this pattern governs daily survival, it becomes the default way people interpret all forms of success. You naturally begin to believe that doubling your effort should double your results. You expect growth to be visible, measurable, and immediate. However, the most meaningful forms of progress do not follow that pattern. Whether it is financial independence, career leverage, or personal stability, the underlying mechanism is not linear. It is exponential, and that difference changes everything. Some of the most significant fortunes ever created were not the result of extraordinary predictions or sudden breakthroughs, but rather the outcome of consistent actions compounded over long periods of time. Despite this, the concept is often dismissed by everyday individuals because it appears abstract or irrelevant to their current situation. People hear the term and assume it belongs to complex financial systems or massive portfolios. If they only have a small amount saved, they believe it does not apply to them at all. This is a critical mistake. Compounding extends far beyond money. It influences habits, knowledge, health, and reputation. Every action you take is either building momentum in your favor or quietly working against you. The difficulty is that its effects are not immediately visible because people are trained to expect instant feedback. They become discouraged when results do not appear quickly. They begin something positive, remain consistent for a short period, and then stop when nothing dramatic happens. What they fail to realize is that they often quit just before the curve begins to rise. To understand why this happens, imagine plotting progress over time. Instead of a steady upward climb, the line remains almost flat for a long duration. It barely moves, creating the illusion that nothing is happening. Then, after enough time has passed, it begins to rise sharply. That early flat phase is where most people give up. It feels like wasted effort, even though it is actually the most critical stage. Consider a realistic situation. You decide to take control of your finances. You reduce unnecessary spending and commit to saving a fixed amount each month. This requires real sacrifice. You skip outings, delay purchases, and consistently choose discipline over comfort. After an entire year of effort, you look at your savings and see a modest number. It does not feel life-changing. Then an unexpected expense appears and the money disappears almost instantly. At that moment, it feels like all your effort was pointless. This is where many people abandon the process. They interpret the setback as proof that the strategy does not work. In reality, what they experienced was the early stage of compounding, where results are still forming beneath the surface. The behavior itself was transforming their mindset and discipline, but because the visible outcome was small, they dismissed its value. The same pattern exists in physical health. When someone commits to improving their fitness, wakes up early, exercises consistently, and makes better food choices. After weeks of effort, there is little visible change. The mirror does not reflect progress, and the scale barely moves. Frustration builds, and the routine is abandoned. What goes unnoticed are the internal changes already taking place. The body is adapting, strengthening, and preparing for larger transformation. The foundation is being built, but it is invisible. Those who achieve meaningful success understand this phase differently. They recognize that lack of visible progress does not mean lack of progress. They are willing to continue without immediate validation. They do not rely on constant rewards to stay committed. Instead, they trust the process, knowing that results will eventually accelerate. If you want to change your situation, you must adjust how you perceive time and reward. You need to become comfortable with delayed outcomes and repetitive actions. The most impactful improvements in your life will often appear as stagnation for long periods before they suddenly become obvious. When it comes to money, the early purpose of compounding is not dramatic wealth. For most people, it begins with creating stability. Small amounts saved consistently provide something far more valuable than luxury. They create distance between you and crisis. Without that buffer, even minor disruptions can cause significant problems. With it, challenges become manageable rather than overwhelming. As savings grow, they begin to influence decisions and made. Instead of reacting out of fear, you gain the ability to choose. You can decline unfavorable situations, negotiate better opportunities, and approach life with confidence. The shift in mindset has a powerful effect on your income and overall direction. Over time, the combination of financial growth and improved decision making begins to accelerate progress. Eventually, if the process continues uninterrupted, a point is reached where your resources begin generating additional value on their own. At that stage, effort and reward are no longer directly tied. Your past discipline starts working for you continuously, creating opportunities and outcomes that would have been impossible in the early stages. Reaching that level requires patience and consistency through the most difficult phase, where effort feels disconnected from results. Most people never arrive there because they stop too soon. They misinterpret the quiet beginning as failure, when it is actually the necessary build-up for everything that follows. You have to get through the harsh opening stage where everything feels slow and unrewarding, where progress is almost invisible and discipline is the only thing holding you together. Because before anything meaningful can grow, you must create breathing room in your life, and that process is rarely exciting or glamorous. Well, it demands that you tolerate monotony while putting aside small amounts again and again, resisting every urge to waste it on something temporary that disappears as quickly as it arrives. And what you are really doing in those moments is not just putting aside money, but gradually reclaiming control over your own existence, inch by inch, month after month, building a cushion that slowly separates you from desperation and dependence. And if you only think of growth in terms of savings accounts or interest percentages, then you are overlooking the most powerful variable you actually control, which is your ability to earn more in the future. Because no matter how disciplined you are with spending, there is a ceiling to how far cutting costs alone can take you. If your income never evolves, eventually you must focus on increasing what flows into your life. And that requires a completely different kind of patience. One rooted in learning, repetition, and deliberate self-improvement over long stretches of time. Yet most individuals approach their working life with the same short-term thinking. They apply it to hourly wages. They treat their job as nothing more than a daily trade of time for cash, arriving just to meet the minimum expectation so they can keep their position, collecting their pay at the end of the week and mentally checking out as soon as they leave. Staying in identical roles year after year while wondering why nothing changes, believing that simply being present equals progress, when in reality they are not building depth at all. They are repeating the same shallow layer of experience over and over again without adding anything new to it. And real advancement does not come from time served, but from layers built, from expanding capability in a way that compounds over time. And this is where the idea of combining skills becomes critical, because growth in your professional life is rarely about becoming the single best person in a narrow field. Especially for the average individual, aiming to dominate a highly competitive niche often leads to frustration due to the sheer number of people competing at the highest level. But there is a far more practical path, which is to develop multiple related abilities that strengthen each other when used together. And over time, their combined effect becomes far more valuable than any one of them alone. Imagine starting in a simple role where your primary responsibility is keeping things organized, managing schedules, responding to messages, and ensuring daily operations run smoothly. At the beginning, you are paid for routine, tasks that many others could perform, making you easy to replace. But instead of limiting yourself to those duties, you begin investing extra effort outside of your required hours, slowly teaching yourself how to interpret data through spreadsheets. Even though at first it feels confusing and frustrating, you spend weeks struggling with formulas and functions without seeing any financial reward. And this stage is where most people give up because nothing seems to change. They question why they are putting in effort without immediate compensation, not realizing that they are laying the groundwork for something much bigger. Because progress in this phase is invisible but essential. And after enough time, that confusion starts turning into familiarity and eventually confidence. Now you are no longer limited to basic organization. You can also understand numbers, trends, and reports. And that combination alone already separates you from the majority. But you continue pushing forward, deciding to improve how you communicate, learning how to present ideas clearly and speak with confidence, even when it feels uncomfortable and unnatural at first. Pushing through that awkward stage where everything feels forced, and once again enduring a period where improvement is slow and hard to measure until eventually those abilities begin to connect. Now you can organize operations, interpret information, and communicate it effectively to others. And none of these skills individually require extraordinary intelligence, but together they create a profile that is far more valuable than the sum of its parts. And over time, this layered growth shifts how others perceive you. You are no longer seen as just someone who follows instructions, but as someone who adds insight and clarity. And that shift leads to opportunities that are not incremental, but significant. Because once you cross a certain threshold of usefulness, the rewards accelerate rapidly. But this is exactly where impatience destroys progress for many people. Because instead of allowing this process to unfold, they constantly interrupt it, jumping between jobs or industries in search of slightly higher pay, leaving environments where they had already begun building knowledge and relationships, resetting themselves back to beginner level again and again, trading long-term growth for short-term gains, not realizing that every time they start over, they lose the momentum they had built. They never stay long enough to move beyond basic competence into true expertise. And as a result, they remain stuck trading hours for money instead of being valued for their judgment. Because the highest levels of income are not tied to physical effort, but to decision-making ability, to the capacity to quickly assess situations and provide solutions based on years of accumulated understanding, like a skilled technician who can identify a complex issue almost instantly because of countless past experiences where the value lies not in the minutes spent fixing the problem, but in the years spent learning how to recognize it. And if you want to move beyond earning based solely on time, you must start treating your career like something that grows over time. You are asking yourself whether what you are doing each day is adding to your long-term capability or simply maintaining your current position, choosing to stay in environments where you can deepen your knowledge instead of constantly chasing small increases, allowing your abilities to build on each other until they become impossible to ignore. And beyond skills and income, there is another form of growth that is even less visible but equally powerful. And that is the trust you build with others, because your reputation functions like a hidden asset that influences every opportunity you encounter. Even though it cannot be measured directly, it develops slowly through consistent behavior, through showing up when you say you will, delivering WO. That you promise and taking responsibility when things go wrong, and in the beginning it feels like there is no reward for this level of integrity. You put in effort without recognition, watching others cut corners or take shortcuts and sometimes appear to benefit from it in the short term, which can make you question whether maintaining high standards is worth it. And many people eventually lower their expectations of themselves because they do not see immediate returns. But what they fail to understand is that trust builds quietly beneath the surface, and over time it begins to influence how others see you, how much responsibility you are given, and how willing people are to rely on you. And as that trust grows, it starts creating opportunities that would not exist otherwise, whether you are working independently or within an organization, because people prefer certainty. They prefer to work with individuals they know they can depend on. And once you reach a certain level of reliability, your reputation starts working on your behalf, bringing in opportunities without you having to chase them, reducing friction in your interactions, making decisions easier for those around you, because they already believe in your consistency. And even when mistakes happen, as they inevitably will, that established trust acts as protection, giving you the benefit of the doubt instead of immediate judgment. And this kind of influence cannot be built overnight. It requires the same long-term commitment as financial growth or skill development, choosing to act with integrity repeatedly, even when it goes unnoticed, believing that over time those actions accumulate into something far more valuable than any short-term advantage. And while all of these forces can elevate your life, there is an important truth that cannot be ignored, which is that growth itself is neutral. It does not distinguish between positive and negative outcomes. The same process that builds success can also amplify poor decisions if left unchecked, meaning that every habit, every choice, every pattern you repeat is being strengthened over time, whether you realize it or not. Whether you realize it or not, and that is why awareness and intention are so critical, because without them you may find yourself reinforcing the very things that hold you back instead of the ones that move you forward. And understanding this gives you the power to consciously direct that process, to ensure that what you are building day by day is actually aligned with the life you want, rather than drifting into something you never intended to create. It operates like an indifferent numerical law, one that expands your destructive patterns just as relentlessly and precisely as it amplifies your beneficial ones. And because of that, we have to face the uncomfortable reality of its darker expression. The phenomenon of downward accumulation, the threat hidden within it, mirrors the promise of its positive counterpart. Because at the beginning, nothing appears alarming. The impact of a poor choice seems so small that it barely registers. There is no instant collapse, no dramatic consequence, and that illusion convinces you that nothing is wrong. It seduces you into comfort while something massive is quietly building force beneath the surface, completely unnoticed. One of the clearest and most unforgiving illustrations of this downward spiral can be seen in expensive consumer borrowing. When someone charges a $2,000 getaway or purchases electronics using a card with a 25% rate, and then only covers the smallest required payment. Each month they have essentially activated a system that works against their own. In future, every hour that passes, that balance expands. Whether they are resting, working, or dealing with illness, the number keeps growing. What they have unintentionally created is a mechanism that drains value from their future effort and redirects it straight into a financial institution. Regardless of their determination or work ethic, they are now tied to a decision that has already been made. Eventually, that initial purchase ends up costing 3 times its original value. The same exponential pattern that creates wealth over time is now being reversed and used against them. But this downward effect is not limited to money matters alone. It quietly erodes human capability in far more subtle ways. Especially when it comes to the condition of the body. Picture someone in their early 30s. Overwhelmed by pressure and fatigue. To cope, they rely on convenience foods filled with artificial ingredients. They stop exercising and reduce their rest to only a few hours per night. If they make one unhealthy choice or miss one night of sleep, nothing catastrophic happens the next day. They wake up slightly drained, yet still capable of fulfilling their responsibilities. Because there is no immediate penalty, the behavior repeats. Day after day, month after month, year after year, their entire decade passes in what feels like a stable state. They assume their system is resilient simply because it has not yet broken down. But the biological system operates with perfect memory. Every neglected meal, every restless night, every inactive day is quietly adding to a growing burden. And when they reach their 50s, the hidden curve sharply turns. Suddenly, there are serious health conditions, persistent inflammation, heart-related complications, and a dramatic drop in vitality. It feels sudden, but in reality, it is the result of years of unnoticed accumulation, finally reaching a tipping point. The same invisible mathematics capable of building extraordinary success is equally capable of dismantling physical well-being. This identical pattern also reveals itself in the realm of mindset and social connections. Consider someone who casually develops a habit of negativity. At the beginning, it seems harmless. Occasional complaints about work or light gossip about others. It even feels relieving in the moment. But over time, those small expressions gather force, eventually shaping a deeply pessimistic and draining personality. Their automatic response to difficulty becomes blame and victimhood. Gradually, the people around them begin to distance themselves. Close relationships weaken. Opportunities diminish because their presence reduces the energy in any environment they enter. They themselves alone, frustrated and resentful, without recognizing that their current reality is simply the accumulated result of thousands of small negative interactions over many years. And if you intend to navigate modern life successfully, you must develop a serious awareness of this destructive buildup. You have to understand that neutrality does not truly exist in your actions. Everything you do is either contributing to progress or quietly pulling you backward. The absence of an instant consequence is not a reward. It is a hidden danger. Respecting this reality means identifying and removing small harmful behaviors before they reach the stage where they begin to expand rapidly and damage everything you're trying to construct. Recognizing how this principle works changes your perspective in a powerful way, but knowledge alone is not enough to defend you against everyday pressures. When you are exhausted, under financial strain, or surrounded by people chasing quick success, your instincts will push you toward shortcuts and instant rewards. Surviving the early phase of this process requires more than determination. It demands a structured approach that shields your progress from your own impulses. Think of it as a personal framework for steady growth built on 3 essential adjustments in how you operate. The first adjustment involves redefining how you measure progress. The current world conditions you to focus on very short intervals. Income is tracked hourly, expenses are due monthly, and digital platforms update constantly. This constant exposure to short-term measurement trains you to expect immediate visible results, so when you start something like saving or improving your health, you expect noticeable change within days or weeks. If you repeatedly check your investment balance every afternoon or weigh yourself every morning, you are magnifying the smallest fluctuations and ignoring the bigger trend. This narrow focus creates frustration and often leads to abandoning the process altogether. To truly benefit from long-term growth, you must extend your perspective. Begin evaluating your actions over years rather than days. Accept that a smart choice made today might not show any visible benefit for several years. Once your time frame expands, the minor ups and downs lose their emotional influence over you. The second adjustment is to resist interfering with processes that are already producing results. Evidence consistently shows that stable long-term outcomes are achieved by allowing good decisions to continue uninterrupted. Yet in everyday life, this is extremely difficult because people crave activity and change. There is a constant urge to modify, restart, or abandon system simply to feel in control. Imagine you have been consistently paying extra toward a loan for many months. Progress is steady, though not exciting. Then suddenly you receive additional money. The temptation to redirect that money toward immediate pleasure becomes strong, convincing yourself that you will return to the plan later. But this interruption does more than pause progress. It removes the future impact that money would have created over time. The same principle applies to skill development or career paths. Abandoning a valuable learning process for a new trend resets the growth curve you had already started building. Discipline in this context means doing less, not more. If something is working, your responsibility is to maintain it without unnecessary interference. The final adjustment centers on direction rather than intensity. Many people attempt to transform their lives by making extreme changes all at once. They design routines that demand maximum effort every single day. This approach is unsustainable and often collapses quickly. Steady progress day does not require extreme speed. It only requires a consistent positive direction maintained over long periods. Small, manageable actions performed regularly are far more powerful than intense bursts that cannot be sustained. Reading a few pages each day, setting aside a modest amount of money consistently, or practicing a skill in small increments will outperform any short-lived surge of effort. There is also an important environmental factor within this approach. Your surroundings should make beneficial choices easier and harmful ones more difficult. If every positive action relies solely on your motivation, it will eventually fail. Automation and simplicity are key. Set up systems that handle decisions for you. Keep your environment aligned with your goals so that the easiest option is the right one. This reduces the need for constant self-control and protects your progress during moments of DIFF or stress. Once a few of these systems are in place, life begins to shift in subtle but powerful ways. The changes may not be obvious in the short term, but over several years, the difference becomes undeniable. A person who consistently saves, reduces liabilities, learns gradually, and manages their environment effectively builds a stable foundation that supports long-term success. What appears uneventful from the outside is often the very process creating independence internally, maintaining a slight advantage in your daily actions, whether through spending a little less, learning a little more, or treating others with greater respect, ensures that your overall direction remains upward. Even if progress feels slow, the long-term impact is transformative. A small positive angle maintained over many years leads to outcomes that seem almost unimaginable beginning. Success in this context is not about speed or comparison. It is about persistence and refusing to stop moving forward. No matter how gradual the pace may seem, that's it. Thank you for being here.